I don't know about you all, but I am not one who engages in puzzles. And I have a mother and a sister who are puzzle fanatics, but I'm not one of those. But during the holidays, I put a puzzle together. And it was hard. Silly me, it was 1,000 pieces. It was very intricate. And at times, there might have been a few cuss words in my head as I was trying to find those final pieces. And in fact, there were 2 border pieces that I couldn't find until about 5 days later when my husband found them in a very obscure place in the sofa. But, I have methodology. If those of you who do puzzles also have a methodology, it's about putting the border together first and then trying to patch in pieces that seem obvious. But many times what seemed obvious was not the case. And those were the times when it was very frustrating that I would arrange and rearrange and try to figure it out. And then I would step away for 24 hours and come back and be able to put a piece in that was right in front of me. And as I was working on this puzzle over the course of a week, I so often thought about our efforts around our COVID response and how easy it's been to put some things in place and how challenging it's been to fit in other pieces. Let's see if I can get this to advance. So as we think about what we've done in terms of COVID, certainly there's been the mitigation pieces. So I want to just give you some updates on where we're at. We have a group that meets every week, in fact, a couple of times a week, and it's a small group that works on testing. We've had the opportunity to work directly with the Department of Health on this endeavor, and I appreciate that they include our office so that we're not only updated but can give input. And currently, we're continuing on with test to play and test to return, which I've explained previous, but for new board members, really concentrating on those students who are engaged in out of school or after school activities, as well as students who are coming back off of quarantine. And we've put some mitigation tactics in place with testing that allows for our students to stay in school and not spend so much time out of school, which they previously were doing with a 14-day quarantine. So that's been very helpful. We're releasing on, I guess tomorrow actually, additional tests. Those tests will be warehoused at the Salt Lake City School District warehouse. We appreciate Salt Lake School District really supporting our state on these efforts so that we have space, and our charter directors, superintendents, regional service centers, everybody, regional service agencies rather, everybody's really leaning in to try and come up and get all of these tests and get them out to our schools. We have heard from some that teachers are having a hard time accessing some of the tests. So when we talk about the tests that are going out to our schools, those are Buy an X Now tests, those rapid tests. But there are other tests available for teachers at clinics and other places, and they should be able to get to the front of the line to get a rapid turnaround on some of those other tests. And so there's been some miscues with communication, and we're working on that. We want to make sure that teachers and staff know where they can go to get the tests. And again, this is a coordinated effort from the Department of Health. We try to support wherever we can and communicate and work with them. But that's kind of the update on the testing. In terms of vaccines, we so appreciate that our governor's office, including newly elected Governor Cox, very focused on trying to get vaccines for our teachers. And while we only received 70% of the vaccines promised from the federal government for a variety of reasons, I do appreciate that our teachers and staff in our schools have been prioritized. And you've heard on and off through the news that maybe they're not getting them till the end of the month, or maybe it might be February. I will tell you that the governor's office, Department of Health, and Unified Command have all worked very hard to get teachers prioritized. I firmly believe that that will happen sooner than later. I think we have it on good authority that they've been able to accelerate vaccines for teachers and prioritize those for teachers and for school staff. And we gave an assist of getting numbers to the Department of Health for that effort. It also includes our private schools. I think that's important to know as well. The other thing that has happened this week is additional funding coming from the federal government, and President Trump signed that into law on December 27th. So $54.3 billion in education funding will be coming out, and this is called ESSER 2. We refer to these funds as ESSER and GEAR going to the governor's office, ESSER, which is Elementary Secondary Education Relief Fund. And that will be coming to us in the form of about $274 million, to be specific, $271,684. So that's a really good amount of money that is based on Title I Part A that was amended in 2020. And it's about 4 times the initial award. So we appreciate Secretary DeVos, her team, and President Trump's efforts in getting money to education again, because it's greatly needed. So that's where we're at with mitigation, both in terms of funding and the efforts around testing and vaccines. I want to spend a little bit of time today on the academic learning loss. And we've been hearing about this. We've been gathering data. So let's talk a little bit about what we know and then what we can do about it. So the data points that we have to this point are things like Acadience, which some of you might know as DIBELS, formerly known as DIBELS. We have kindergarten entry data, the PEEP in preschool. We have data on credits earned. So looking at all of that data, we know that we have academic learning loss. And Jennifer Thronson's on the line, and I'm going to ask her to weigh in a little bit, but I want to talk just specifically about credits. We're looking at grades 7 through 12, and this is an example where we can see the credits that were attempted and actually earned in 2020, excuse me, and where we're at this year in the 2020-21 school year. So 19-20 last year, and that includes spring, where we went into soft closure, and then looking at 2021 for this year. So, it averages around about a 20% difference in credits earned last year to this year. But I'll just give you one example. And this is really raw data. We're still trying to clean this up. So again, think of credit deficiencies, credits attempted versus credits earned. So 73% of, let's just say 12th grade and look at that. Our raw data, and again, this needs to be cleaned a little bit, but 73% of credits attempted were earned last year by 12th graders, and at this point in time, it's 52%. And that seems to ring true grades 7 through 12. So credits earned versus credits attempted speaks to what we've been hearing anecdotally, especially in those settings where we have students that are face-to-face, which is throughout our state primarily. If they're face-to-face, and then we have some students that are online in those face-to-face settings, anecdotally, we've been hearing that the students that are online are not doing as well. And I'm excluding Salt Lake District from this because we're talking about face-to-face systems where some students are online. We have it broken down by demographics as well. And there's some surprising information within the demographics. It seems to cut across all demographics of ethnicity and economics, et cetera. So I want to have Jennifer weigh in, Dr. Thronson weigh in, if she will, on what we're also learning from Acadience and KEEP and PEEP, and anything she wants to add to the credit conversation, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dr. Thompson.
Board Chair. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak towards the academic learning losses that we're seeing. Some of this will be repetitive for previous board members and an update for those of you that are welcome to our board today. So specifically, early learning, we have different assessments that we gave in the fall. Those data points kind of gave us some indication that we did have impact just from the soft closure we saw in the spring in terms of where students entered this fall.
Jennifer, can I interrupt you? So I'm probably the one with the worst hearing loss, but I'm getting part of it. I don't know if you have to get closer to your mic or what. Sorry.
Stop if it's not loud enough because I speak.
There you go. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So for kindergarten specifically, as we look at our early learners, as the credits attempted and credit earned data that Superintendent Dixon speaks of is related to our secondary age students. Looking at our earliest learners, our kindergarten students came in very similar to how they have in the past. We didn't see a big difference there. 40% of students came in not ready in terms of their literacy skills, and about 25% came in not ready for mathematics. Longitudinally, that's been a pretty similar trend over the last few years. We haven't seen a lot of difference. There is a substantial difference in the students who might have a disability, are multilingual, or have low income status for their families. Those particular students continue to see a greater, lesser level of readiness than their peers who don't experience those same factors. But as we look at the Acadience reading data, so that's the assessment that we give in the fall, winter, and spring to our students in K through 3, that data also showed what we're kind of experiencing this learning loss, about a 15% difference between the amount of students we had coming in previous years ready to take on the grade level they were entering compared to longitudinally. And so, for example, in first grade, we have 55% of students coming in not at benchmark status that we would hopefully have our students entering now. So more than half of the population for first grade. That was our most impacted population in terms of the percentage of students not coming in at benchmark status per grade level. So our early learners have definitely experienced the impact of soft closure and continue to kind of, we're not middle of the year, we have a small percentage of the data in about a quarter. We're not seeing the gains we typically see at this time of year either. We still have a lot of data to gather, so very soft conclusions in that space, but the learning losses we are seeing coming into the fall seem to be persisting into the winter. So those would be kind of the big ones that have hit there. And just any enhancements to the credit data. I think we saw the biggest dips in 12th and 7th grade. So with that transition of students coming from elementary into middle school, those credits attempted versus earned, significant gap there, as well as in our 12th grade populations, large gap that Superintendent Dixon pointed out. And it was interesting to see that we didn't see a difference across our ethnicities. So whether we're white, non-white, Asian, or non-Asian, we didn't see any big differences in terms of all of those populations are being impacted across the board. So any questions there might be, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Superintendent. Oh, Board Member Earl's got her hand raised.
Yes, my question has to do with, are we able to break down how many of those are, either part online, part at school? Because the Acadience is specifically for elementary, right? So the comparisons of the different structure of the day, is there a way to do that comparison, or is that a little beyond our ability, or do we need to wait till the end of the year?
Couple of things. Great question. So specifically within the data set, the data was at the beginning of the year, so in those first couple weeks of school starting, so the factor of what type of learning experience they had probably didn't impact that data coming in. With our middle of year data, we could do some analysis. We've known Salt Lake has been online the entire time. In the other LEAs, it's hard for us to know, at least to my knowledge, and Superintendent Dixon, maybe Aaron Brock or someone else who might know. We don't have great indication of which students are online when that I'm aware of. And so that would be difficult to do, but not necessarily impossible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do think it's a great question, Board Member Earl, and something that as districts really start to unpack that data, I think we'll definitely want to report that out to you, as well as looking at comparison in Salt Lake District, who has been our only district that's been online. What are they finding from last year to this year? And to this point, we have some anecdotal data. As I mentioned, some of the teachers that I work with on the teacher advisory group have talked about their face-to-face students when they versus their online students. And we've heard that throughout the state when you have this sort of dual system within a district or a charter, and we are hearing about a difference there. But until we see the actual data, it's kind of hard to report on it with confidence.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. Did you want to continue with your report, Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, sir. I think one of the exciting parts of this now, and I'll refer back to, sorry, I've got background noise. One of the things that I'll refer back to is that puzzle. So thinking about the puzzle pieces and where they fit in, you heard me talk about federal funding. We're going to be talking about some funding coming, that's a possibility as we go to our legislature to talk about possible one-time funds. And so what do we do? Given that we've got one-time money coming, non-lapsing one-time money, what are some possibilities with that funding? And I think it's important to hear the voices of teachers, of our principals, our superintendents, our charter directors, for our new board members, so that you're aware. I have advisory groups that I meet with. We meet with charter directors, superintendents, and then I have an overarching COVID advisory task force. So yesterday I met with teachers, and I've been during the holidays trying to interact with teachers as well, just to say, if you had the opportunity to have some one-time funding, what would you recommend that your district or your school does with that to mitigate learning loss? And they have, there are a lot of ideas out there, and I want to hear some innovative ideas as well. We know that Ogden, I think Deputy Jones will be talking, perhaps, or Dell, about a project that Ogden has worked on. I think they've reported that to the board recently, or to interim. They've been doing some really interesting work in summer bridge and tutoring, and they have great data to show for it. But there are other ideas out there as well. I think those districts who are able to pull teachers together, whether that's face-to-face or virtually, to share ideas, has been really welcomed by teachers. So they would like to have some paid days during the year for sharing best practices and implementing those, whether that's summer boot camp or during the year. But time really, I just hear that over and over again. They need time, but there's not really time in the day. They're already stretched pretty thin. So how do we extend time for them? Individual and small group tutoring by teachers or paraeducators who are well equipped to do so. I mentioned the extended year and summer bridge support. Home visits and calls to parents, just checking in with parents to see how it's going. Those districts and charters who have implemented that strategy have really strengthened those home-school relationships. And this is where we've seen great efforts on trying to track students who are disengaged down and see what kind of supports they need. And that's where you find out what's really going on that creates these situations where students aren't able to engage based on the situations of their parents' ability to work or what have you. Flexible schedules for teachers to be able to meet with parents when they're available. So rather than having teachers working 12 and 14-hour days, thinking about how their schedules could be flexed so that they can meet with parents and students in the evening. Having learning labs for teachers to really concentrate on lesson design and deeply getting into some of the intervention strategies. Just thinking about, as we move forward, again, going back to the models where teachers are teaching face-to-face and online and in blended models. I know a lot of our systems are interested in providing a lot of options for parents in the future and for students, but it can't all happen on the backs of one individual teacher. So how might we look at some pilots where they're breaking up these different modalities and assigning the right people in those various modalities? Developing parent resources for home and online. A lot of states have invested money in doing so, and some of our districts have, and it's made all the difference for parents. We have a lot of these resources on UEN, on the UEN website, but parents don't always have access to those. Time for teachers to coordinate across district boundaries. I know Paiute, I'll single out Paiute district, tiny little district, and yet they're spending some time with students out of school on a day where they're bringing all their teachers together to really do some coordination and share best practices. And they've invited other teachers from other districts to come and join them. And then ongoing support for social emotional learning. I think that we have districts and charters who have really invested a lot of funding and time in social emotional learning. You've heard me highlight Murray District, Canyons, Davis, and others. But in some districts, they might be given a book or watch a seminar, and then that's it. There's no follow-up. And my mantra has always been training without follow-up is malpractice. And so if we don't provide that ongoing support, especially where we have students and teachers masked up and you're not able to see their smiles or have some of those interactions that are generally part of building those relationships, there are other strategies that need to be put in place. And that's something that teachers really mentioned to me, especially yesterday, is getting that kind of ongoing support for social emotional learning. You know, I again, just thinking of some innovative and out there ideas. If I had nothing but money and power, I would find money to at least pilot a year-long strategy, much like what we proposed last year in House Bill 114. So really beefing that 114 up where we want to take a cadre of master teachers and have them work directly with our staff and have them out in districts and charters supporting teachers in their area of expertise. And we have so many amazing teachers across the state, and being able to have them out of the classroom for a year sharing with their teachers, I think is just something that for those states that have done that, it's made a world of difference. And for those districts who are doing that now, it's made a world of difference. So, you know, being able to pay for a group of teachers to work directly with software developers. We have Silicon Slopes, and we know that technology can make a difference in interventions. So wouldn't that be great to be able to pay teachers to co-design software, education software? So there are a lot of ideas out there, and we look forward to generating more of those. But as you think about one-time money and you hear the business cases that will come forward, I think it's really important to know that learning loss is real. We have a lot of opportunities, and context matters. So providing some flexibility with guidance, I think, would be a great opportunity for us to be innovative and support parents and families and our students in this state. So that's my report, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness behind our staff and our educators and staff out in the field trying to think about the way forward to mitigate learning loss, as well as just trying to conquer this virus. So thank you.
And thank you, Superintendent. Questions or comments from board members? Member Hymas, your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent. I just had a quick question. You mentioned some time and what we're trying to do to help these teachers. And I wondered if in your conversations, if there was some programs or policy that they found to be burdensome that we could remove from their plate. I know we keep wanting to add things to their plate, and we say, look, this is going to help you, but I don't know how much we're actually removing. So I again wondered, as we talk about teacher efficiency and keeping teachers, is there something in your conversations that was brought up that maybe we could do to help teachers?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, Board Member Hymas. I think, at the reporting level, sometimes that burden lands on you as a school administrator and at the district and charter level. In terms of the classroom, the thing I hear time and time again is that many of our teachers are expected to teach in multiple modalities all in the same day. And that is the burdensome thing that they talk about, that there's just their hours have expanded. They want very much to connect with students and parents, but if they don't set guardrails around that, they can be accessible 24/7, and it's wearing on them. So moving forward, I think it would be prudent for us to help our system think about different modalities and ways to use funding, perhaps to pilot using teachers in different ways, in more flexible ways, so that it's not on the burden of one teacher to teach 12 hours a day in these different modalities. And they are the first to tell you that in spite of their own learning and their own improvement and doing the very best that they can and feeling like they're really doing a much better job online than they did in the spring. They still know that it's just not enough to try and expect them to do all of these different things. I mean, the work of a teacher is so hard, just in general, if you're face-to-face or online, and that's your full modality. But to add other modalities to that, that's the one thing I hear from teachers all across the state.
Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Earl?
Yes, my question has to do specifically with the funding. Can you tell me, and if you said it, I apologize for asking this twice. What is the money that's coming, $240 million, is that coming to the state to be distributed between higher ed and businesses and K-12, or is that K-12 money?
Great question, and I did not clarify that. That's K-12 money. Higher education also has a pot of money coming to them. So in the overall CARES package, there is a specific fund just for higher ed. So that ESSER 2, when you hear that acronym, that applies just to K-12.
And I apologize, I haven't read through all this yet. What is the timeline criteria for the expenditure of those funds? In other words, is it 1 year from January 2021, or do we have several years? Because that will impact our decision on how we use this. They won't want to hire personnel if, in 2 years or whatever, or 6 months, that money's not going to be allowed to be used for that. So what are they asking for this? What's the criteria?
Yeah, it's a great question. And no need to apologize for not knowing all of this information. We just got this information yesterday, which is why there is backup there. Sarah Young may be on the call.
Sarah's hand's raised. So
okay, Sarah was there. She is. Sarah was on a webinar yesterday with the Department of Ed where they went through the details. So if you don't mind, Chair Huntsman, Sarah could address board members' questions.
Would you answer the question, please?
Of course. Thank you for the opportunity. So Sarah Young, Director of Strategic Initiatives. In regards to this new ESSER 2 funding, our local education agencies will receive an award, and that award is available to cover expenditures from now until the September 30th, 2023 timeframe. So to Board Member Earl's question, it is important to note it is one-time funding, so not an ongoing stream, but they do have a pretty good window in which to spend and make a thoughtful plan.
Okay. Thank you. Board Member Hartz, your hand's raised.
Yes, the data that was shared, I apologize, I'm going back to the data, but it's Acadian, Stibbles, Keep, and credits earned. Was there any, I know credits earned may have incorporated or included math. I'm just real concerned. Anecdotally, we're hearing that math scores are even more depressed than the reading scores, but I'm wondering if you had a chance to capture that data in any way.
And I wondered if Jennifer Thronson can answer. Her hand's raised. Is that okay, Superintendent?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yes, great question. We did look at analysis of the four areas.
How to get you closer to your mic. Thanks.
Language arts, mathematics. We did look at the four core areas to see if there was any substantial difference. And so when we looked at language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies, we did not see across the state on trend any significant differences across the core areas. So anecdotally, you may be seeing that, but from a statewide data picture, we aren't seeing big discrepancies in particular content areas, at least for the four core subjects that we're able to track.
Okay, so you're saying that there's the same difference across the four. So there is a difference in math and science and social studies as well as ELA, and it's pretty much the same.
Yes, so there's definitely a lot of all four, but it's pretty equivalent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Board Member Straight?
Yes, thank you. As I think back over the last 30 years that I've been in education, when I first started, up until the last 10 years, we used to have quality teaching days. And there were years where we had, within a school year, between 10 to 13 total days of professional development, PLC. Basically, quality teaching was expanding the base. one thing about teaching is when the time for performance becomes, the time for preparation ends. And those days before the school year started, between quarters, those became excellent times for teachers to work together, to collaborate, to make a difference. And we need to get back to broadening that base of support, not just for some teachers, mentors, but for all teachers, because the best mentoring occurs with the teacher next door.
Thank you. Board Member Hart, your hand's still raised. Did you have another question?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're fine. Superintendent, you want to please continue, or are you complete? I think you are done.
And that concludes my report, and I really appreciate all of the great questions. Looks like perhaps Board Member Cannon has.
Cannon just raised her hand. So Board Member Cannon.
Thank you. I just am wondering if there is anything more specific. I know you addressed the testing for teachers, and I'm just wondering if our new governor's office has done anything in terms of practically getting teachers vaccinated. Is there some kind of a plan set up to do that on a school-by-school basis or a district-by-district basis? I'm thrilled that they have prioritized vaccinating teachers. I think that's so commendable for our state. I just would like to see it done quickly and efficiently. Can you give me any information on that?
Yes, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that will be accelerated. I know that Governor Cox and the Department of Health and Unified Command have all been working to accelerate that. I believe they're going to make an announcement later today about when that can be expected. It's my understanding that it will be sooner than later. So that's the good news. I know that they've tried to make sure that we had enough, not to just cover our teachers, but also I want to stress that it's for all staff. Our role in all of that was giving the Department of Health numbers, getting that information from the schools, including private schools, so that we could capture the numbers of, bus drivers and food workers and custodians and paraeducators, so that we ensure everybody who comes in contact with students has an opportunity to get that vaccine.
Thank you. I did write down that there was an accelerated timeline, but I'm going to be listening for the announcement later today. Thank you.
Okay. We have two other hands raised, and then we're going to have to jump back into our agenda. Board Member Earl.
Yeah, just real quick, that's remaining voluntary. Is that correct? Okay, just wanting to make sure on that.
Okay. Member Klein.
That was my question, and it will remain that way, correct?
That's my understanding. Again, this is from the Department of Health, but I've heard no conversation about mandating vaccines.
Okay. Well, thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate your report. There's a couple times certains I want to bring to your attention. One will be at 12:30. Will be that half-hour break. Our last meeting, we kind of tried to shorten that up about a lunch break, about 20 minutes. It didn't go very well with our members, and we have a time certain also at 1 o'clock with legislators showing up. So we do have time, I think, to get through some of our